Welcome to the Emporium Outdoors. My name is Michael, and in this video we're going to look at my setup I use for my hunting trip this year in 2023. So typically on my hunting trips I sleep alone, so I take a tent that I'm comfortable with one person in. But this year I wanted a bit more room so I could invite a friend or two to come and stay rather than them having to bring out their own equipment. And this is the main reason I went with the Bass Pro Shops XPS wide bottom rectangular thermal hub ice shelter. And if you've watched many of my previous videos, you know I've used the Cabela's XPS wide bottom single size tent in the past, and I've really enjoyed using it as a winter hot tent camping setup. They're very easy to convert to put a wood stove in, they give good floor space, and they're very quick to put up and down. And overall, they compare very well price-wise to a full-on winter tent. They're actually much cheaper. So there are some major benefits to using an ice fishing shelter as a winter hot tent. So just for example, this is the stove jack that I made for this particular tent, and it's made out of a fire blanket, some Velcro, and some high temperature RTV to stop the ends fraying when you cut the hole. To make the jack, I just take out one of the windows and use that as a template to trace around a piece of fire blanket, and then it fits perfectly. The Velcro's already on the tent itself, and you just have to put the reciprocal part to it and stick her in, and you're pretty much done. Over the years I haven't found that the heat from the stove has damaged the tent in any way, and the windows themselves lend to very good thermal protection, so there's plenty of room in those windows to get a hot pipe for the outside. The stove I've had for several years, and it's the Kinco smaller stove. I think it's the Trekker, something like that, and it's worked really well. The good thing about this particular stove is when I bought this with the Snow Trekker tent, again you might see those on my older videos, it does come with an elbow on the chimney, so it does allow you to angle the pipe and then stick it out of the side of the tent. And that's one thing I would definitely recommend, is if you can possibly help it, don't run the exhaust, the chimney, through the top of the tent where you have to actually cut into the fabric. Either damage the resale price or create a place where it's going to leak if the ice starts to melt and come inside the tent. So I've owned this stove since about March 2018, so it's getting on for quite an old stove now. I haven't had to replace any of the parts, and it's all worked out great. The only change I made to the stove was to put in a false bottom that's lifted by a couple of sets of angle iron, and that's protected the floor of the stove, because with the smaller sheet metal stoves, that's the weakest point. When you get them nice and hot, the bottom can distort and sometimes even burn out. There is some surface corrosion, but overall the stove has held up very well, and to say it's almost 6 years old, I think that's been a very good purchase, and it's lasted a long time. So the way I decided to set this up for myself was to put the stove in the middle of the tent and then have my cot on one side, and you could run a cot on the other side opposite the stove, which we did in the end, so everyone's pretty close to the fire, which worked out really well. I used a simple stick to support the stovepipe on the outside, which again worked out great, and just really lends itself to having a wood stove in this type of ice shelter. And of course I brought along my beloved Kawasaki KVF 360, or the 360 Prairie, and did a fantastic job of collecting wood, taking me around on my travels. Although there wasn't much snow on the ground, it was pretty good going, nice and easy, and the machine made easy work of it. I really do like this machine for just general use. You don't need a huge amount of power when you have high range and low range, and I really couldn't think of a more useful lightweight quad in this situation to do these types of tasks in and around camp, as well as to hunt on, of course. I had a few creature comforts to make the tent a bit more livable. Added a small table, my drop cloth, which is an old moving blanket, and I've got my chair in there as well, and obviously a stack of wood by the fire to keep me nice and warm. And it was warm. It was actually very pleasant indeed. My sleeping bag is only a -6 Celsius, but it did fantastically well, kept me warm enough. Very easy to set up and tear down, and I was very happy overall. So I think the maximum you would sleep in this tent is probably 3 people with cots, and you might have to shuffle the stove down to one end. The other option is to use those disco style bunk beds, in which case you could easily fit 4 people with 2 sets of bunk beds. I'm obviously using a stove that I already own, but if I was going to buy a stove for this particular tent, then I would maybe go up a size. With this particular stove I can get between 2 and 2.5 hours before I have to reload it, but with a bigger stove you can put in a large capacity of wood and have it run a little bit longer. If you could get something like 4 hours or even better, that would be a much better option for this size of tent. A little tip, if you are into winter camping, it's always a good idea to have a candle. If you can actually get a flame going at winter, especially when it's very cold, it's sometimes hard to sustain it. Your wood fire will go out quite a lot, and to have something like a candle where you're not having to use either a fire steel or a lighter to relight things. A candle's a great idea. You can keep that flame going, you can dip it in and out as you need to add a little bit more heat in different places. And it has saved me winter camping over the years where I've woken up, the fire's gone out and it's been extremely cold, and I've managed to get the candle lit and use that to get the stove going and to get comfortable again. But it does save a lot of hassle with worrying about the flame going out. You can just keep that candle going. So the weather when camping was quite mild for this time of year. I think the coldest it went down to is maybe -12, something like that. But this did mean there was some very clear nights and you could see the Milky Way perfectly from where I was camped. So it was very exciting to take some really nice photography and to enjoy the stars. And the other benefit of winter camping or hot tent camping in Canada is you've got an endless supply of wood to burn in the stove, and you can do all your cooking on it as well, so you're not bringing extra gear to do your frying or baking or whichever type of cooking that you wish. This year for a change I only brought my battery powered DeWalt 12-inch chainsaw with me. I didn't bring my 16-inch still. I thought this would probably be fine enough to do what I need to do. Plus I brought a way to charge it and a solar panel, so if I did get stuck I could probably recharge it. But the amount of wood that I burnt was pretty small really compared to very cold days where you're constantly keeping the stove filled. During the day the stove wasn't running, so I just ran it for a few hours in the evening and in the mornings. So this year was an excellent year for grouse. There was lots of them around. So we did take a few of those for lunch and dinners and they were awesome. So on this camping trip I was back where I did most of my camping videos on my YouTube channel. So this is near Edson in Alberta, and there had been quite a few fires that had gone through there. This was an area that was pretty special to me, and it's where my outro was filmed, for instance, and lots of other videos. And I'll put up a picture, you might recognize it, but this is now all totally gone. So many memories made here, and now that's forever changed. But you can also start to see nature reclaiming it back. There's a small willow tree sprouting out from the ashes. So this will recover. It's part of the cycle of life, and the way that lots of trees and other vegetation propagate is through fire, so it's a very necessary part of the forest. It's just sad when you see change happen to places that you love. So overall I spent about a week camping out on this hunting trip, and most of my days were spent just exploring either with friends or on my own and looking around and seeing older places, see how the forest was. So I had a very relaxing time. Found a few places I'd never been to before. It's a lake I'd probably driven past many times and never noticed it. And it was nice just either observing the wildlife and see what animals were out and about and to take pictures, or to sometimes take a couple of them home for lunch. And obviously I don't mean as guests. So it was really nice to see all the wildlife around, and I'm pretty sure that the fires had added to the diversity in the forest and to open some of those places up so the birds could thrive, and also the predators will be around as well. So it's kind of a big circle of life. So I don't normally film my hunting trips because YouTube has made it a very unpopular topic. As well, it's kind of a break from YouTube and a bit of a vacation for me where I don't have to worry too much. But I did want to make this video to kind of show the Cabela's tent. But overall I thought the tent did an exemplary job. It was very easy to set up, actually not much more work than the half size or the normal size ice fishing tents. It was just a few extra panels and it worked extremely well. Lots of room, and I'd highly recommend buying this tent if you're looking for something you can use for ice fishing as well as a 4-season winter tent. You can't go far wrong. So until next time, take care. And as always, thank you very much for watching. If you like my videos, leave me a comment, maybe a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe.